الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين صدق الله العظيم. We praise Allah and glorify Him, and we beseech Him this night most humbly for His guidance and for His blessings and for His protection as we attempt to address the subject beyond September the 11th attack on America, the future of the Muslim Ummah. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. I would like to take about 1 hour of speaking time, because tonight I would be much more interested in your writing to me all the questions you have, and not just your questions, your thoughts, your comments. So that tonight is not only my lecture to you, it's also your feedback, because one man can't handle this subject. It is the collective thoughts and the collective wisdom. And wherever I have traveled in the world, and Allah has been so kind, you would be amazed to know the number of places I've gone. I've invariably benefited from my audiences. I've learned so much from my audiences. We begin in Allah's blessed name. The ayah of the Quran, of course, Surah An-Nahl, I always begin with this ayah. And we sent down the book, the Quran, on thee, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, that this Quran might explain all things. And therefore that this Quran might explain the strange world in which we are living today. It's not just politically strange, with its political globalization, moving in the direction of world government. And tomorrow when the United Nations will disappear. It's not only strange in its economy, moving in the direction of globalization of an economy, a world economy, in which one people will now enslave all of mankind. It's not only strange in respect of the emergence of one way of life, one culture. I call it the blue jeans Jamaat. Everybody living the same way. Everybody having the same diseases around the world. Being born the same way, dying the same way, being buried the same way, around the world. It's not only strange in terms of what is happening to mankind, but what is happening to the environment, the earth. Around the world. The same thing, which is why they had that conference in what used to be called Johannesburg, now it's Igoli. Gauteng. The Johannesburg World Summit. But in addition to this, there's also something else strange happening. And that is a confirmation of the hadith. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, and you take this hadith home with you tonight as you ponder the issues. He said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا. When Islam began, it was something strange and therefore different from everything else in the world. And Islam will one day return to that state of being something strange and different from everything else in the world. And we are now living in that age in which Islam, not part-time Islam, no, we're talking about the Islam of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, that Islam. That Islam is becoming something stranger and stranger. Something different from the rest of the world. Different from that globalized political order. Different from that globalized world economy. Different from that globalized culture or way of life. Like a square peg in a round hole. But not for Islamic modernism. I don't know whether you ever met it. A strange creature called Islamic modernism. It was it was alive and very well healthy in Malaysia. Until a great axe fell upon it a few years ago. I warned them, but they wouldn't listen to me. Islamic modernism, of which my teacher, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari Rahimahullah, warned, and his book is downstairs, the best book on Islam, in my opinion, ever written in the English language, is his 2-volume work, The Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society. My teacher, of blessed memory, is downstairs. Islamic modernism, an attempt to reinterpret the religion, to subject Islam to a progressive interpretation so that it can fit in with the modern world, so that America can sit down and have dinner with Islam. So in the United States, while I was there, I saw this strange version of American Islam emerging from a large section of the African American Muslim community, an American version of Islam that America would be comfortable with and sit down and have dinner with this Islam. Islamic modernism, trying to make Islam to be in harmony with the modern world. But the Islam of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam is today becoming what it was at the time when it emerged. Something gharib, something strange, something different. Having said that, I don't need to deliver the rest of the lecture, because you now can understand the analysis which follows. And there are many opinions that you now have to discard and throw it into the garbage bin. When once you hold on to this hadith of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. On September the 11th, the United States was attacked. We know from eyewitnesses that there were 2 aircrafts which struck at the Twin Towers in Lower Manhattan. And it could be that the aircrafts themselves caused the buildings to collapse. It could also be they got some help from some dynamite and so on planting before. We know from eyewitnesses that there was a 3rd aircraft which crashed in Pennsylvania. And no less an authority than the White House itself confirmed that aircraft, the plan was for that aircraft to target Air Force One and to target the White House. And we have unconfirmed reports because no one saw, and there was no evidence on the ground. Absolutely astonishing, isn't it? A huge aircraft slams into a building and there is no evidence that the aircraft ever existed. The Pentagon. America was attacked on September the 11th in circumstances which were absolutely suspicious. Who attacked America on September the 11th? And we have said that there is a massive cover-up on the part of the Bush administration. And we have anticipated that those who have information so far concealed will eventually release that information in order to embarrass the US government as part of a strategy to bring down America. And so CNN is going to be broadcasting it. And the New York Times is going to have a field day. And all those who control the media in the United States are now going to go to work to lavishly publish all of this information which demonstrates beyond doubt that the US administration was involved in a massive cover-up. Who attacked America on September the 11th? We used a method. We said, since we do not have the evidence which can be used in a court of law, let us look to see who has benefited. And when we use that method of analysis, we have come to the conclusion that the only beneficiary of the September 11th attack on America has been far and away the State of Israel. There is a little booklet outside, A Muslim Response to the Attack on America. It's just about 25, 28 pages. I want to suggest to you, and it's very cheap, I think maybe $2. I want to suggest to you it might be a good idea to take this booklet and give it out to people who you think ought to have a little bit of brainstorming. Because when they read this, they'll be stunned. They won't get this in their newspapers and from the mainstream media in this country. But when they read this, I think they're going to have, for some of them, an intellectual wake-up call. So that booklet is downstairs. We said that those who attacked America, therefore, must have at their core the Israeli Mossad. And they must have benefit and help from many others within the United States, within the administration, even from within the White House. When we look at their strategy, we see that they put on board the aircraft a large number of Saudis. Sounds suspicious. Why so many Saudis? And these are not Saudis who are well known for their Islamic fervor, for being what they call militants. No, these are middle of the road, normal Saudis who drive BMWs. Huh? People who attended American universities, for example. They were on board the aircraft and they died when the aircraft crashed. So these were the hijackers, except that one of them read in the newspapers that he was dead. So he went to the Saudi government and he said to the Saudi government, "It seems to me as though I'm alive." The Saudi newspapers published this article, which I read with my own eyes. This particular student had studied in Minnesota, I think, in the early 1990s. And in 1995, perhaps, he had reported both to the local police and to the Saudi embassy in the United States that someone had broken into his apartment and stolen his passport. whoever did that used that passport to hijack his identity. And so they could put him on board the aircraft. And so the planning for September the 11th, 2001 started many, many years before. Which reminds me, I must tell you that when I arrived in New York in April 1991, through Allah's leave and kindness, within a matter of 6 months in New York, I had already been pushed to a very high profile position. Very well known in the entire New York metropolitan area. And then in November 91, when I had gone to the State University of New York in Stony Brook, someone broke into my apartment and stole only my passport. That's all. So if ever you get the news that Imran Hussain blew up the moon, you'll understand the background. They're holding it. They have not as yet used it. But the more I talk about it, the less likely that they can use it. My passport, therefore my identity. Why so many Saudis? It's suspicious. And why these middle-of-the-road Saudis? The answer is because Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia, has a friendly relationship with the United States. In fact, there is something common between the state of Saudi Arabia and the state of Israel which would surprise you. They are sisters. The same forces who work for the establishment of the state of Israel are the same forces who work for the establishment of the state of Saudi Arabia. The same forces who have kept Israel alive today and guaranteed Israel's security are the same forces who have kept Saudi Arabia alive today and has guaranteed Saudi Arabia's security. And when the state of Israel is to be destroyed, Saudi Arabia also goes down into the garbage bin. They're sisters. But at the moment, the friendly relations and the good press which Saudi Arabia receives in the media in the United States of America, and the fraternal relations between the government of Saudi Arabia and the government of the United States stands in the way of those who attacked America on September the 11th. In what way? I said to you last time I was here that the United States cannot attack Iraq until a particular moment arrives. And I gave you some homework. I ask you to think. Iraq does not pose any threat to the United States. It does not pose any threat to the state of Israel. The Israelis have to be digging and digging and digging for a strategy to be able to make Iraq look threatening. So now they're coming up with all kind of fancy theories about biological weapons and weapons of mass destruction and so on. It's just dust in the eye. Well, and if Israel does not pose any threat, why all of this hullabaloo, all of this shouting from the mountaintops about attacking Iraq? And who, in military strategy, which commander-in-chief, which country which is about to wage war, which country will announce for 1 year in advance, 2 years in advance, we're going to be attacking you? And then publish in the newspapers all kinds of alternative strategies, how to attack. It sounds suspicious. Sounds like the attack on Iraq is not for military purposes. Sounds like the attack on Iraq is for political purposes, so that political dividends might accrue from it. What are those political dividends? That is at the heart of the beginning of my talk tonight. I do not want to return to the lecture I gave last year, in which I began with the ruling state of Britain and identified that with the hadith, a day like a year. The hadith of Tamim ad-Dari. Are you shaking your heads? Imam? I'm going to have to repeat that lecture now?
Yeah, like a day.
Yeah?
Yeah, like a month.
A day like a year?
Yeah, like a month.
Okay, if you didn't hear that lecture, we don't have the time tonight to repeat it, so the tape recording is downstairs. Abu Rahman has it downstairs. The hadith is a day like a year, a day like a month, a day like a week when Dajjal is released, okay? And we identify the island of Britain with a day like a year, and how did we arrive at that? We're not going to do that tonight, because we did that already. And then a day like a year ends, and it is followed by a day like a month, and one ruling state gave way to another. Britain is no longer the ruling state in the world. The United States of America now becomes the ruling state in the world. And in the same way that there was this mysterious, puzzling, baffling relationship between the island of Britain and the Holy Land, starting from the Balfour Declaration, so too now you have this mysterious, mystifying, baffling relationship between the United States of America and the State of Israel, which was so clearly apparent in Durban. World Conference on Racism and Racial Development, Racial Discrimination. When Israel walked out of the conference, because the whole world combined to condemn Israel for its atrocities on the Palestinian people, guess who walked out with Israel, holding on to Israel's coat's tail? Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam. So this puzzling, mystifying relationship between the second ruling state and Israel. The first ruling state in Israel, Britain and Israel. The second ruling state, the United States and Israel, is explained by a day like a month. And then we said that a day which is like a month is now coming to an end. And the September 11 attack on America is in many respects a parallel to another attack which had occurred many years earlier. There's a parallel between the two. That one was in the summer of 1914, okay? The assassination of the Grand Duke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo. And that attack, that act of terrorism, launched the First World War, the big war. Similarly, September the 11th, the same forces at work in the summer of 1914 are the same forces now at work, September the 11th. With that attack in Sarajevo, Britain, which was the ruling state in the world, now during the First World War, has to yield to another ruling state, namely the United States of America. If you don't understand, go and read your history. Now with September the 11th, the attack is now on the United States to bring down the United States as the ruling state in the world. But in the process of bringing it down, the United States have some very important work to do for Israel. I can identify tonight two very important things that the United States has to do for Israel. There are many more, but there's no need to do more than simply two. In order for Israel to succeed the United States as a ruling state in the world, not only must the US economy collapse and the US dollar collapse, and when the US dollar collapses, it brings down the whole world of paper money with it. And if you don't believe me, just wait. Just wait. This is going to be the topic, Blacktown, Wednesday night. Do please come on Wednesday night, because that is the most important lecture of all. Islam and the international monetary system. Please come on Wednesday night for that lecture. Not only must the United States collapse its economy and its money, but in addition, Israel has to wage a big war, which even non-Muslim political analysts are now anticipating. A big war. Even Jews now within Israel, I'm getting emails, even Jews within Israel, Jewish academics who are up in opposition to the Sharon government, they are now understanding that there's something big about to happen. And they're warning the world about it. Of course, it's too late now. Israel has to wage this big war, which is already planned long ago. And the territory of the state of Israel will dramatically expand. And the Palestinian problem will be solved because they'll be exported out. That is the massive human rights crime that the Israeli academics are now anticipating and warning the world about. But in addition, in order for Israel to become the ruling state in the world, not only must she take control of all of this territory, she must also control the oil of the Middle East. Saudi oil, Iraqi oil, Kuwaiti oil, Gulf oil. But I don't see Israel taking Iranian oil. No. And you'd want to ask me why. Yes, you'd want to ask me why. In the question and answer session, not now. I don't see Israel touching the Iranian oil. Now that's going to be a very, very important event in world affairs. If Israel takes control of this oil, Israel will have her hands on the throat of the world. Not so much Britain and the United States, because Britain has North Sea oil. The United States has a lot of oil, sufficient to meet its domestic consumption. And so who is going to have Israel at their throats? The answer, Europe, Japan, and the rest of the world dependent upon Middle East oil, but particularly Europe and Japan. Which is why at this moment you will notice a lot of strange noises coming out of Europe in hostility to the United States. Because the Europeans are beginning to open their eyes and now beginning to slowly understand what we knew all along. Yes. This is why the German minister made a statement concerning Mr. Bush and acting in a way like Hitler acted. It's not by accident. But Israel has a PhD in deception because it's Dajjal at the back of this, the mastermind. And Israel would not want to wage a big war and appear to the world naked, clearly as an aggressor. No, that's not deception. Israel has to wage her big war and make it appear as though she was only defending herself. The only Muslim I know of who has had the capacity to be able to penetrate the deception that has been going on all these years, the only one I know of, was a man who never went to Al-Azhar University. Now, he wasn't a sheikh. His name was Malcolm X. He's the only man I know of who had that eyes wish to see and could clearly recognize the strategy and the deception. Read Malcolm X. How is Israel going to launch this big war and yet get away from being perceived by the whole of humanity as the aggressor, blatant aggression. You have to come with a good strategy. The strategy is this. Ariel Sharon goes into Masjid al-Aqsa with 1,000 Israeli military with him, with their shoes on, with the full knowledge that this calculated act of extreme provocation must have a response, a fiery response. And as the flames of the new intifada emerge, you must keep it burning by committing upon the Palestinian people more and more atrocities that drive them into a greater and greater rage. This is planning, this is strategy, this is not happening by accident. As Israel unleashes this barbaric oppression upon the Palestinian people, you must have a television station which you plant amongst them, which will cover this, that your Egyptian television would not cover, and your Jordanian government would not allow on Jordanian television, so you create something called Al Jazeera. And the Arab masses believe Al Jazeera is their station. This is the only place in the world we can get authentic information, Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera is now used to portray all the atrocities. And so around the Arab world, the masses only have to tune into Al Jazeera and they know what's happening. And so the Arab masses become more and more angry, more and more enraged. And guess who begins to tremble now? The governments which are pro-American. The governments which have entered into peace treaties with Israel. These are the ones who are now trembling because their people are becoming more and more enraged. So Mubarak in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, I don't know, is Fahad or Abdullah, and Abdullah in Jordan, and Sheikh Sabah in Kuwait, etc. Israel has to judge the temperature on the ground in the Arab world. And because Israel has a strategic military alliance with the United States of America, it is when Israel judges the temperature to be hot enough, only then will Israel give the go-ahead to the United States to attack Iraq. Only then. And you have to inform the whole world in advance that you're going to attack Iraq. So the masses must be expecting it. Why? So that when the United States attacks Iraq, you would have the kind of spontaneous outburst from the Arab masses that you want. That they will take to the streets in massive demonstrations. The kind which brought down Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in Pakistan. The kind which brought down His Imperial Majesty, the King of Kings. Which one? Shahin Shah, the King of Kings. They tested this formula. They tested this formula because they were actively involved in all that drama in Iran. Oh yes. Without in any way being uncharitable or lessening in any way my appreciation and my respect and the honor which I have for those who led the Iranian Revolution. I have to admit that in addition to their sincere efforts and their struggle against the oppression of the Shah, that there were also others at work to help them without their even knowing it. So they have finessed this methodology of how to bring the masses out onto the streets. And this is what is about to occur. As the masses go out onto the streets, the ones who are going to be targeted are the pro-American regimes in the Arab world. The objective? To get one or more of these regimes to fall through massive demonstrations, anti-American and anti-Israeli demonstrations. Which one is likely to fall first? Let me stop. Come on. Huh? Jordan is correct. Jordan is correct. Which is why Abdullah has his bags packed already. The reason why Jordan is the first to fall, likely to fall, is because more than half of the population of Jordan is Palestinian. And because Jordan shares a border with Israel. If the Jordanian government falls, in consequence of the attack on Iraq, and the Jordanian government, or shall I call it the Anglo-Jordanian government, is now replaced by an anti-American, anti-Israeli, and best of all, a government declaring itself to be Islamic. If that happens, and the Jews are going to be praying for that to happen, then you will see television really coming of age for the second time. The first time was September 11th. Television will now get to work around the world, CNN leading the pack, and the media around the world will now be used to portray an impending scenario in which, like the domino effect, governments around the world of Islam, they will claim, are now going to fall. And the world of Islam is rising up now. And one-eyed Muslims, of course, are going to believe it. The world of Islam is now going to rise up, and all these governments are going to be swept away. And authentic governments representing the Muslim masses will now emerge. And therefore the Jews are going to have their throats cut. This is going to be the most dangerous moment in the entire life of the world of Jews. The media will portray it. If we don't do something, we will all be slaughtered by these Muslim fanatics. Yeah? I tell you, this will be drama worthy of Hollywood when it comes. Huh? They must be hating me now for revealing their secrets. It is in this scenario that Israel will say, we have to do something. If we just sit here and do nothing, the state of Israel will be destroyed and the Jews will all be slaughtered. What can we do? They call it a preemptive strike. A preemptive strike. But it won't be a preemptive strike. It will be the most dazzling display of the magnificent application of state-of-the-art military technology that will leave even Uncle Sam in the backyard. A war like Uncle Sam has never seen and could never wage. That is what Israel is going to wage. Do they have the technology? I believe they have technology that even Uncle Sam doesn't have. It will be a lightning strike. Israel has to put on this magnificent display of military power and state-of-the-art technology beyond anything else that the world has ever known, in order for Israel to impress upon mankind the validity of its credentials that is now going to become the new ruling state in the world. Before Fahad could even blink, the Israelis have taken over the Saudi oil fields, and the Iraqi and the Kuwaiti oil fields. The United States, of course, will make some noise, and Britain will make some noise, but will they send troops? Not, of course not. The United Nations Security Council is now going to be used by the rest of the world, particularly Uncle Europe, and Uncle Japan, and the rest of the world. They will take the United Nations and seek to use the United Nations now to do something about this. Collective action to force Israel to withdraw. Because if Israel does not withdraw, Europe is going to be choked, and Japan is going to be choked. And as the United Nations is now being used for the first time in its history, an attempt is being made to use the United Nations effectively by the rest of the world, I anticipate that the United States Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives will now pass resolutions forcing the US government to withdraw from the United Nations. And as soon as the United States withdraws from the United Nations can no longer sit down in New York, pack up, and move. So in the same way that the League of Nations collapsed, the United Nations now collapses. United Nations cannot be relocated anywhere else. No. Because the United States is the ruling state in the world. The League of Nations collapsed because the United States was not in the League of Nations. That's why the League of Nations collapsed. And so the United Nations cannot be relocated anywhere. No, it can't take it to Geneva. It's not going to work. And so Israel gets to hold on to the fruits of a naked aggression. And Israel takes control of the oil of the Middle East. It may be that it will be that moment when the US dollar collapses, but more of this in my lecture on Islam and the international monetary system, and you would be amazed. We say we follow the Quran, but we lie. We lie. We say that we follow Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, but we lie. We lie when you attend our lecture on Islam and the international monetary system. When Israel becomes the ruling state in the world, then Israel will rule the world for a day which is like a week. If you doubt me, and you doubt my method of analysis, I say no problem. Just wait. Just wait. It is at that time that oppression of the true followers of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam will really begin. The part-time Muslims, of course, will be attacked now and then for purposes of psychological intimidation. So they put their tail between their legs and go back home and watch TV. But the full-time Muslims are going to be attacked and targeted, and they'll know you from your bank account. That's all. Your bank account will tell them everything they want to tell. The Prophet said alayhi salatu wasalam about this oppression, that a man would pass by a grave and roll on the grave and say, I wish I were in the grave rather than the dead man. Not because of religious reasons, but because of biting, relentless oppression. So if you are comfortable in Sydney and you think that things are going to continue as it is and you'll get away from the storm, the war on Islam that's going on now, And yet you can remain as a good Muslim. You're living in dreamland. Because the war on Islam is going to intensify like nothing you've ever seen before. What you've had so far is only an introduction to the war on Islam. The war on Islam has been going on for more than 1,000 years. Not since September the 11th. Wake up. The Crusades were part of the war on Islam. The same people who launched the Crusades are the same people who dismantled the Ottoman Islamic Empire, are the same people who destroyed the Caliphate, which is my lecture for tomorrow night, Imam al-Mahdi and the return of the Khilafah. It is the same people who today created the State of Israel and control the State of Israel. It is the same people who are going to be ruling the world, the European, who was first dressed up as a Christian and is then dressed up as a Jew. After Israel has ruled the world, of course, for a day which is like a week, at the end of that period of time, what's going to happen to the water in the Sea of Galilee? Be dry up. It is only when the water in the Sea of Galilee is dried up, it is at that time, according to the ahadith in Sahih Muslim, you can go and check it out, my book is downstairs, Jerusalem in the Quran, go read it. It is at that time that you can expect the Son of Mary to return. So when I said, I expect it to be 50 years from now, about 50 years. And when I put into the record for your tape records, for those who listen to this lecture when I'm dead and gone, when I said, I can be wrong. And some people still have objections to his saying that he expects the Son of Mary to be coming back in about 50 years from now. Okay, I'll change it. All I have to say is I expect the Sea of Galilee to be dried up in about 50 years from now. Huh? That's all I have to say. It's the same thing. Because the Son of Mary will return when the Sea of Galilee is dried up. So if they have objections to that, all I have to say, well, I expect the Sea of Galilee to dry up, 50 years today, and they'll be happy with that. Huh? It is at that time that Dajjal will now enter into a day which is like our day, and therefore he'll be in our dimension of time. And he'll be ruling the world from Jerusalem with what would appear to be eternal rule. It is at that time that the Imam will emerge from Medina, hurrying to Mecca, which is our lecture for tomorrow night. It is at that time that the Son of Mary will come down, and the Son of Mary will have his hands on the wings of two angels. It is at that time that the true Messiah will kill the false Messiah. When I lecture on Jerusalem in the Quran at Lakemba on Monday the 7th, inshallah, we go over the subject again, but in greater detail than I did over here. So that lecture is going to be 2.5 hours, inshallah. It is at that time that the true Messiah will kill the false Messiah. It is at that time that Gog and Magog will be destroyed. It is at that time that the army will come from Khurasan, and no one will be able to stop that army until it reaches Jerusalem. Hadith of Sunan of Tirmizi, Sahih Hadith. And then Islam will destroy the State of Israel, liberate the Holy Land. It is at that time, the Hadith which is in Sahih. Allah fahab li tawbata wa ufir dhunubi fa innaka ghafiru dhanbil azim ilahi lasdu lil firdausi ana wala
Allah faham beli taubatan waghfir